Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to the Artist Next Level podcast. Very happy to be here with you once again. We are very close to the end of 2020, and today I want to talk to you about the top 5 takeaways, as an artist from 2020. I kind of do this every year where I come in the podcast and I do an episode about my top takeaways or the things that I've learned this year. And today is no exception. This year is no exception. I'm here to talk about what are like the top 5 things, looking back into the year that I learned, about the art community, about being an artist, and that makes me excited also for next year, right, for 2021 and beyond. So it's going to be a great episode. Don't go anywhere.
Resources, inspiring interviews, business practices, and practical advice to take your art career to the next level. Join Sergio Gomez in today's Artist Next Level and get ready to take control of your career.
All right, so this year has been quite crazy, and I think we can all agree on that. I think it was a couple of weeks ago that I like to read Times Magazine, and I received the magazine, the latest issue, and it had the number 2020 and a big cross on top of it, like say cancel 2020. And I think that's pretty much, we were to summarize the year of 2020, that's pretty much what it was for most of us. No matter what, type of work that you do or where were you at in the world, I think in some way or another we were all affected. Some people in bigger ways than others, but we were all affected, with COVID. Perhaps you have family members who went through it or who are no longer, here with us. So, if that's the case, I want to give you also my deepest sentiment and condolences for that as well. 2020 has been such a difficult year, such a challenge also for the art world, for the art career of all of us. Exhibitions that have been canceled, shows that have been postponed, sales that did not happen, art fairs, you name it. Every part of the art world was affected in some way or another. However, we look forward to a much better 2021. I think when we all arrived to the realization this year, that this was not going to be easy and this was not going to be quick, I think we began to make adjustments. So today I want to look back at what were the top things that I learned about being an artist in 2020. So I hope you enjoy this insight that I'll be sharing with you as well. And maybe some of the things that even I'm doing for 2021 based on what I learned of 2020. So let's get started, my friend. Top 5 things I learned from 2020, and they're in that particular order. They're just 5, right? As I was kind of looking back, I always take time at the end of the year to look back. And also, as we just finished the very cool goal setting bootcamp for artists that we had last week, and it was amazing. And maybe you took that bootcamp. There were really almost 1,000 artists working with us in the bootcamp, making plans, creating a strategy for 2021. So if you are one of those artists, I hope you did your homework and you took that plan and you put it somewhere where you can see it year round in 2021. So if you were there, also very excited. Thank you so much for joining us. It was super awesome. It really got me energized. And so now I've taken time to look back and see, okay, as I've looked ahead of where I'm going, also looking back at where I was. So let's start with number one. Number one, kind of a highlight, or not highlight, but takeaway from me of 2020 is that artists adjust and adapt no matter what. Again, number one takeaway from me is that we as artists, we adjust and we adapt no matter what the circumstances are. And I think that is so true, particularly as for me, when we kind of got to this was in mid-March, and a lot of the shows that I had lined up for the year got canceled. Also, as a curator, some of the projects that I have been working on, starting sending emails to artists that, hey, sorry, we're not going to be able to do it. We're going to postpone it or, do something differently. And, I think that happened to everybody, right? As we realized that happened. But how we all kind of began to, after the shock moment, how we began to figure things out around it. And you started to see like galleries also coming up with online programming and museums starting to do a lot of lives, and also artists, we began to do a lot of Zoom things, with each other and with groups, and we started to do more kind of collaborations online. So there was a lot of, adapting and testing and trying and figure things out, to adjust and adapt. And that really inspired me. I have to say that really inspired me in 2020, even though as hard as it was, to look at, how we as art community, how we as artists adjusted, to the reality, and then adapted our ways of making, of ways of being an artist, or ways of showing up to new sets of standards and realities, what a lot of people call the new normal, which I like to call it the new now, right? Because hopefully, we don't get stuck in here. So again, I think that for me was something that it really was inspirational. See how as artists, we have the capacity to adapt and to really make changes in order to continue working and moving forward. And I think there was amazing art that was created in 2020 because of it. And I think that was kind of one of the biggest takeaways for me, to see how we adapted. Number two, right? So that was number one. Number two, second biggest takeaway for me of 2020 and lesson learned is that artists find each other. We as artists, we have a way in the most difficult times to, find each other and even forget sometimes our very own differences and find our common ground. I think that for me was a big takeaway this year in 2020, as the pandemic, began to take ravage around the world. How many artists began to create a sense of community within their own platforms. Artists began to interact more with each other. I saw artists doing, for example, programming in their social medias where they took turns to go live, and they had a little program that they shared, and so at 5:00 this artist goes live, and then at 6 this artist goes live, and all around a specific theme. Then as we also got to experience Black Lives Matter, to also how many artists kind of came together for that, and creating programming and things of that nature. So all throughout the year, I saw how as an art community, we as artists found each other, in an organic way, without anybody having to tell us, okay, here's a room, now you meet each other. But we took that initiative and started approaching others, and artists working in different ways. And, even as I started, working in my podcast, for that whole beginning of the pandemic season, I did a whole series of artists in lockdown series, where I was just reaching out to artists and finding them in their own confinement. And I ended up doing 50 episodes of that through video. And there was a pretty cool series, of finding each other out, even when we were not able to see each other in person, where we were not able to walk, in the same gallery or in the same art fair and so on. And how this pandemic, for as much as we were separated, we were also closer together in that way. And that also, again, inspired me in huge ways, because not only we have the ability to adapt and adjust individually, but also being able to find each other out and to connect with each other and reach out to each other, which sometimes, takes guts, sometimes takes, self awareness and encouragement to be able to reach out to another. And sometimes to maybe somebody else who's doing better than you or who you admired and so on. And I saw a lot of that happening in 2020. And I think that's one of my biggest takeaways as well. How we as artists, we found each other. And I'm so glad, it happened. Not that the pandemic, but how glad that it happened, that we got to connect with each other. Number 3, the third takeaway for me in this season, 2020, worst year ever, right? It was artists can still sell art online even in the worst of recessions and circumstances. That was another big takeaway. One of the biggest fears I think that we all had in the art community was that, wow, now that we have this pandemic, it's the end of art sales, right? People are not going to be buying art. It's going to be really hard in terms of art sales. And, I'm not saying that it wasn't. It was very difficult. Many galleries, unfortunately, did not survive, did not make it all the way to the end of the year. They had to close. Many artists' businesses had to also close or, really hurt in very difficult ways. However, there was also something that was inspirational about this and that I experienced. And also had to experience through many artists that I work with as well, is that even though all the closures and things happened and people were not going to shows and exhibits and art fairs, collectors were still buying art. Many were still buying art. They were still going online and buying and buying and buying art. What ended up happening is that as more people stay at home and, working now from home, many people use this time to upgrade their homes. People who still had additional disposable income, they updated their homes, they did renovations, they bought the art that they always wanted to put on the wall, because now they are in the house a lot longer than before. So that kind of moved to the front, and that put all of us as artists, in a better position, to be found, to be seen. And if you had been working prior to the pandemic in having a strong online presence, well, hopefully it paid off right now, because it was an influx of people going online into social media to find artists. And for me personally, if you follow me on Instagram, social media, you may have seen that actually my art releases went really well. One in the summertime in the middle of pandemic that sold out within a couple of days, and the last one that I did actually a couple of weeks ago of 16 small works through my social media campaign that I did, it also sold out in 3 days. So things like this, and collectors who came and found me through social media and came and purchased artwork that totally unexpected way, just because I was super easy to find. All these things, totally changed my perspective on art sales in 2020, and I got really excited about it half into the year, and really got my community together of artists inside the Art Next Level Academy, the artists that I'm coaching, and say, hey, we can do this, and we finished really strong the year. We did a Small Works Art Sales Challenge, which many artists, sold out really quickly or had really strong sales, and many of them who had never done something like this before, and they were totally surprised on how their audiences responded, right? So it was such a great thing. As a gallery owner, I run 33 Contemporary Gallery, which is my gallery, and we represent artists from around the world. We have a huge inventory of artwork, and again, at the beginning of the pandemic, we were kind of really scared of how this was going to affect the sales. And surprisingly, of course it had an effect, but we have been selling and steadily growing sales every month throughout the whole year, even in the pandemic. So, again, that's just the result of people going out their way, and even though they cannot physically go to an exhibition to see art in person, still wanting to support art and working artists. So that was very refreshing. That was one of my biggest takeaways, that artists can still sell art in the worst of recession. So that's pretty awesome, and something that we should continue working towards. All right, number four takeaway is that artists thrive in community. That's also a huge, big takeaway for me. Artists thrive in community. Not only being able to connect with each other, but also stick with each other, right? Stick with each other and thrive in community. I think this was the year in which all of us artists, we found who our true tribe was, right? Who was our group? Where was our group? The people that we connect with, that we shared life with, that we shared struggles with, wins and losses. And, this was a year in which that, I think, became super, super important. And, for me, working with the Art Next Level Academy, that was my group, that was my community that really helped me in the worst times and also in the best times. And that's a community that I'm still super excited to show up to every day and work with and help and coach. And now that we did this goal setting boot camp, also was super amazing to meet so many artists from around the world. And it's the communities that we can build and make and really grow from the comfort of our home and our studio, no matter where we are in the world. That's what makes it so amazing. If this pandemic had happened 20 years ago, it would have been a totally different story. But because it is 2020, it has just made other tools that we had at our disposal such an integral part of how we function and who we are and how we do interactions and business with each other. So I think one of the things that really inspired me a lot in 2020, and was one of my biggest takeaways, is the importance of being part of a community, right? That we as artists, we can thrive inside of a community versus just being our own lone rangers out in the world. Even though you may be in the most remote of places, you can be part of a community online. because the boundaries of space, are not there when you are connecting through the technology that we have today. So that was super excited for me, and I hope that you have found your community, your group, your people to connect with. Right, I think that's one of the main takeaways. If you don't have one, make sure that that's maybe something that you want to look for in 2021. Where are my people? Who's my tribe? Who can I connect with every day or every week, or as you need it, for support, and also to support others, right? Not only to receive, but also to give of your knowledge, expertise, and experiences. And the last one, my friend, the number 5, where the fifth kind of top takeaway from 2020, this crazy year of 2020 for me, was when it all fails, artists still show up. I think that's a super good lesson for me. When it all fails, when everything seems to be working against us, artists still show up. How cool that was, to see artists of all types rising up to the challenge, not just going in hideout, but rising up to the challenge and say, hey, I'm here to share, to do, and to be. And that was just an amazing, experience. Who can forget, as we were in the pandemic and the lockdowns, those videos that we saw on social media of people singing in the balconies or musicians playing, from their open window, and artists making art, from their doors, or live videos in Zoom or Facebook or Instagram, and poets, creating poetry. And, it was just so inspiring, when it all failed, when things got dark, we as art community, we as artists, we showed up. And I think that's the beauty of art, right? That's the beauty of the thing that we have to offer to the world, this thing that we call art, that no matter the circumstances, we can still show up with our art. And sometimes we think like, well, Sergio, I don't have a big audience like you or like others, who am I going to show up to? But you know what? When you show up, it could be just 1, 2, 3, 20, 500 people. Doesn't matter the number, right? It's there's always somebody there on the other side who's going to receive it. And that's what matters, right? And that's all you can do is control you showing up, and then let that have a ripple effect as it goes out in the world. I don't think those people who started singing a cappella from the open balconies, when they were in lockdown, that they were going to be seen all around the world all of a sudden, in 24 hours, because others were recording it live on social media, and then they went viral, right? That's not why they did it. And they did it because of the joy and the pure need to connect and to create and to make, something beautiful out of this chaos. And I think, my friends, that's probably my biggest takeaway, the one that really fills me with joy and passion for what I do, for showing up to you here in my podcast, to showing up on my Instagram, Facebook, and now TikTok, which I'm also now as well. It was just this thing that we as artists, we show up. We show up, and we can count on that over and over again. So, my friend, as we wrap it up, for 2020, I know there's still an extra week, but I just wanted to take time to kind of share with you these top 5 takeaways for me, which are super important, and I wanted to definitely share them with you, because I like to share with you the things that move me, the things that makes me exciting, and the things that I learn over time. So with no exception today, I want to do that. And of course, my friend, inviting you, if you're looking for a community to connect to in 2020, check out the Artist Next Level program. It's a program where I coach artists. I help artists from around the world to work together. We have weekly Zoom sessions, which is pretty awesome. We have live Q&As. We have an amazing community. I have tons of courses and resources to help you with your marketing, with your exposure, with your art sales, with whatever you need. And my wife, Dr. Yaina Gomez, she deals and she helps us all with our mindset and wellness expertise. She kind of helps us to deal with our emotions, with our roadblocks, with our mindset blocks that we may all come to. And she does that really well. Every month, once a month, she does live Q&A on that particular topic to the members of the Academy. So if you want to check that out, I invite you to just go to theartistnextlevel.com. Just go to theartistnextlevel.com/join. Again, theartistnextlevel.com youtube.com/join. You'll find all the details about our program, how you can join, if you want to be part of our community. And my friends, thank you so much again for being here. I appreciate you. Thank you for those of you who have been listening to the artistnextlevel.com since the very beginning. This is now episode 260 something. And some of you have been listening since episode 1 and, some 5-6 years ago. I think 6 years ago. And, it's what a ride. It's been crazy. It's been incredible. And I just want to take a moment to say thank you so much for your support, for being here. And even for those of you, maybe those of you who this might be your very first episode that you listen to. And I want to say thank you so much for being here as well. I appreciate you just as much. And make sure you subscribe to the channel. And as we close 2020, I would ask you also, give me a review on iTunes. I would really appreciate if you give me a review. Let me know how this podcast helped you at the end of the year. I would be so happy to read your reviews and comments on how this podcast has been part of your artistic journey over the years, or maybe over the months, or over the weeks, whichever you pick and you choose. Thanks so much for being here, my friend. I will see you very, very soon. Goodbye.
Check out our website at www.theartistnextlevel.com, where you will find our podcast library, learn about our upcoming webinars, find resources relevant to your career, and much more. Thanks for listening to today's podcast, and we'll see you at the next level.